Let's do a quick intro. Who are you? When did you come to United States and what do you do right now?
I came to the US in September of 2023 for my master's program. I did my master's from Hult International School.
Did you have any work experience before coming to United States?
Yes, so I did my undergraduate in 2019. So after that, I was working. I had switched 3 jobs by that time. So I had worked in 3 different roles.
More interested now in your journey?
Yes, it's difficult. Yes, you will have to put in a lot of hard work and sweat. And yes, you will come up with a lot of rejections. But I think what differentiates people who get results from those who don't get results is going that little extra mile. Like when you look at going to Canada versus coming to the US, the major hurdle that we saw was that if both of us go as students, that means we have to pay double the living expenses and double the tuition cost upfront. When I was researching this, I did a lot of comparison between Pakistan and India. In India, you also have this opportunity to take government loans. In Pakistan, we don't have any such product.
How did you get scholarship?
So our tuition fee was $55,000. The market has been crashing or the market has been generating negative returns. So when something like this happens, it's basically an indicator that there's uncertainty going on in the economy.
Thank you, Rohan, for doing this. I'm excited to share your journey, and also you have like a very interesting angle as well. So I'm curious to see. Plus, you're the first one to talk about Hult School as well. So deep dive into your journey. But before we do that, let's do a quick intro. Who are you? When did you come to United States, and what do you do right now?
Of course. First of all, thank you so much, Yudi, for speaking to me. And also, it's an honor being the first Pakistani and getting to represent my country here on this channel. I really hope I do set a good example. And I mean, yeah. So you said, when did I come here, about my background, and what am I doing right now?
Mhm.
So I came to the US in September of 2023 for my master's program. I did my master's from Hult International School. Our school has 2 campuses, one in Boston, one in San Francisco. I chose the Boston campus and graduated in a year. It was a 1 year program, and ever since then I've been working. So currently I'm working for a small financial advisory company based out of Michigan. So it's a
Mm.
small city called Kalamazoo. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but
No.
it's
Yeah.
like it's right in between. So here's Detroit, here's Chicago, and
Ooh,
Kalamazoo is right in the
in the
middle.
middle.
So
Yeah,
that's where
yeah,
I
yeah.
am right now. Yeah.
Nice. And again, I always like to ask this. So, did you have any work experience before coming to United States?
Yes, so I did my undergraduate in 2019. So after that, I was working. I think I had switched 3 jobs by that time. So I had worked in 3 different roles. One was in a media firm. Second was more like in operations with a mix of finance. And then my last role before coming to the US was purely in banking. So I was a part of a corporate banking team. And that's where I basically realized that maybe doing a specialization in finance is the next logical step for me. So from there on, while I was working for that role, I started applying for multiple places abroad, and then Hult came in. I mean, I know we'll get into these questions, but that's pretty much what set up the basis for me considering a master's and coming to the US.
Got it. Okay. And then, what is your role currently?
My exact role is a paraplanner and investment operations. So basically, what my company does is that we are a full 360 financial advisory company.
Hmm.
So we don't just work with investments, but we also do a lot of estate planning, tax planning,
Hmm.
legacy planning, everything and any. So the
And
way we
is it
work is that
B2B or B2C?
it's purely B2C. We don't
Oh,
do B. Yeah, we don't
so
do
for,
B2B.
for someone like me, I could come to your company and I would like, hey, here's my assets. I need
Exactly.
help with my tax planning. I need
Exactly. Exactly.
interesting.
So
Okay.
we do everything. So the goal behind our company is that we want to be the only resource for anyone who works with us for everything finance.
Hmm.
So that means if they have questions related to how should they, so it starts with how do you start. So if you want to see how our process works, we work with people based on everybody has a job, they have an income coming in, but to get from what you're earning to a goal in the future, let's say like a retirement where you don't ever have to worry about money again, it's like a whole journey and it takes 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Our company basically assists each of our client during that journey. So from the time they are earning, they are in their early 30s, 40s, depending on wherever they are, because we have clients from every age. How do you budget? How do you ensure? So we first work with them on a healthy income level. Like, what's the
Hmm.
amount of money that you need every single month to month? in your bank account at which you can basically cover all your expenses and then not have to worry about or stress about money. Then anything above that healthy income figure, we try to get that invested. So when
Mm.
it comes to investments, it's not just putting money in the market. I mean, there are multiple vehicles. So 401ks, which are your retirement accounts with your employers, then Roths, which are tax-free accounts, then health savings accounts. These are the three main ones. Then after that, we have a bunch of other types of accounts like
Yeah.
brokerage accounts.
Maybe we should do
So
like a separate video on just
yeah,
finance planning
so
or something like that.
that's what we do. And then we also have a lot of clients that are at in retirement or almost at retirement. So with them, we work a lot on trusts. Like, okay, now you
Mm.
have built up these assets, but how do you plan on passing these assets to your kids? Because if you just give everything to your children, they'll end up with a huge tax bill in the United States. So you can't just do that
Yeah.
as well. Then there are ways through which you can do it. So, for example, if it's not just about building your assets, it's also about how you transfer it to your next generation. So it's
Mm.
pretty much everything. And then during all of this, you also have to be mindful of taxes because it's not just about making a lot of money, it's also about keeping what you have. So,
Yeah.
this is pretty much what I do on a day to day basis.
Amazing. It's very fascinating because so far, a lot of time on my channel, we talk about tech, heavy tech background, like, data analyst and software engineers, product managers. So you are like very different roles. So I'm more interested now in your journey. And I also want to ask you, like, before even we get into your journey, so obviously, that we are filming this in 2025, March 2025. Market is brutal for
Yes.
tech job market, especially software engineering, AI roles, data roles. It's just like brutal for international students. So is that same for finance industry, or people are able to get jobs? Like, I mean, get jobs as in it's hard, but it's not as bad as tech industry.
So two things here from your question. First, you talked about the market, and then second, you talked about the overall impact of the market in terms of the available number of jobs. I would say, I don't know if you're following the stock market or the bond markets right now, but right now the U.S. equity markets or
Yeah.
the stock markets are going through one of the difficult times in history because of tariffs. There has been a lot of uncertainty going on, and every single day, if you notice, there's this index called the S&P 500, which is very similar to the I think Sensex that you have in India,
Hmm.
which is basically like an aggregation of all the top companies in the US in an index. So that index has been consistently following. Like basically, in simple words, the market has been crashing or the market has been generating negative returns. So when something like this happens, it's basically an indicator that there's uncertainty going on in the economy. So when that happens, companies try to generally consolidate. And the very first thing that gets affected is marketing and hiring because these are the two major costs for any company, small or large. So, keeping that in mind, I mean, markets were uncertain previously before the elections when we had a different government. Even then, companies were uncertain because there was an election coming up. So, they wanted to keep whatever resources they have, and that's when they do a hiring freeze. So, when I graduated in 2024, uh, it's not like people were not getting jobs, they were, but 2 to 3 years ago, like when we were coming right out of COVID, my seniors told me that there was a time where there was like candidates were choosing where they wanted to go. Like there was a time when there were multiple offers going around for each candidate. But
Yeah.
right now, it's hard.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that graduated with me. I mean, we stay connected on LinkedIn. A lot of them did end up with jobs. I mean, I got one too, but it wasn't easy. Like if you talk about my own job search, I started long before I graduated. So like six, so I would say January or February of 2024 is when I actually started focusing on my job search. I mean, there were periods when I was really focused on it, like every single day. I was just dedicated to networking, applying to places. And then there were also months where I just felt discouraged and didn't really see the needle moving. So, but overall, I started my active efforts since last year, January. And by the time I landed this job where I'm currently at, I started working here at the start of Feb.
Mm.
So in the meantime, I did do a couple of other things as well. Like there was this one freelance role that I picked up right after my graduation up until I landed this job. And ironically, the company where I'm working at right now, I interviewed with them in August of 2024. So right when I graduated, that's when I interviewed with them. And at that time, after going through everything, basically the hiring team told me that we don't we are basically looking at a hiring pause right now. We really like you, but at this time we'll basically look at how our last quarter closes, and then maybe we can reconnect. And at a lot of these situations, students or candidates, when they speak to these companies, they forget about them and they move on with other options. Right after Christmas, I sent them a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year email, and I just asked them to get on a call. And then I spoke to the guy who was originally hiring me, who's by the way my boss now.
Mm,
And I just asked him, like, last time we talked about, you told me that you were going to look at how your quarter ended. So how did you do last quarter? And he said that we had a phenomenal quarter. We ended up with a lot more work than we thought we could manage, and right now we're looking for someone. So are
mm,
you interested? And
mm,
I didn't know that he would come up, and I just told him yes. And within 2 days, there was an offer letter in my email. So that's how it happened. Like, for 1 year nothing happened,
mm,
and then suddenly I followed up with them, and 2 days later I had an offer letter, and three
mm,
days later I was on the road driving from Boston. So I was in Boston. I told you, like, my campus was in Boston. I was driving from Boston to Michigan. So that's how things happen. I mean, yes, it's difficult. Yes, you will have to put in a lot of hard work and sweat, and yes, you will come up with a lot of rejections. But I think what differentiates people who get results from those who don't get results is going that little extra mile. Like, had I not given him a call or sent him that email, I probably would not have the job I have right now, and I probably would have given up on my OPT and gone back to my country.
mm. Okay. Got it. All right, let's go back in time. I would love to know a little bit more about your profile. Like, did you have to give GRE, TOEFL, and is it GMAT, GRE for Hult Business School?
For MBA, yes, you have to give your GMAT. I gave a GMAT, but based on the rest of my profile. So I had average grades in my undergraduate. I applied to, so originally when it started, when my considerations for a master started, I didn't really want to come to the US. So US was not my first choice. My first choice was
Oh.
Canada. Yep. I wanted to go to Canada because at that time, or maybe like coming out of COVID, Canada was all the rage because I had a lot of friends who were
Mm,
going to Canada,
mm,
some for masters, some with a work authorization, starting jobs there. So I was like, maybe, you know what, Canada is like, it's a huge country. I mean, just in terms of size. And then at that point, we thought that it's a growing country. There's a growing economy. Maybe there's a lot of room for a lot of skilled immigrants to go there and set up life, provide value to the economy as well. So that was my first choice. But after, the main difference between US universities and Canadian universities is that if you look from the perspective of money, like in terms of cost, Canadian universities ask for 1 year of your expenses and 1 year of your tuition upfront.
mm,
With the US, you have a lot more flexibility. So that
mm,
was the first reason where I got discouraged. And I don't know if you've talked about this yet in this podcast, but I'm also married. So it's not just me who wanted to go. I wanted to uh, go for my master's with my wife. So a little bit of our background. I met my now wife while we were doing undergraduate. So we did our undergrad together. So naturally, so naturally, when we were deciding to get married, uh, the way we planned our dates were that right after marriage, we'd basically go for a master's together as well.
mm,
So that was one of the priorities as well. So now you see, she was saving up for her masters. We were saving up. I was saving up for my masters, and then we also had some support from our family. But when you look at going to Canada versus coming to the US, the major hurdle that we saw was that if both of us go as students, that means we have to pay double the living expenses and double the tuition cost upfront. So that's like a huge payment. And especially coming from a developing country like Pakistan, if you just do the foreign currency conversion, it was a lot of money. It was like a fortune that we were willing to,
mm,
we'd had to pay. So that was the first consideration that kind of discouraged me from Canada. And then secondly, uh, the main the main reason that we basically stopped Canada and transitioned towards or pivoted towards USA was because between 2020 so between 2021 and 2023, those 2 years, so from the time we decided that we want to go and from the time we started saving up, the dollar at that point against so $1 against $1 was basically 200 Pakistani rupee when we start. And I mean, that's how it was. Like, it was standard, it was following this range, like between 180 to 210 since the past 2 3 years. So that was like a decent range, it was stable. But during those 2 years, from 2021 to 2023, by the time I had to go for my masters, dollar jumped from 200 pkr all the way up to 300 pkr. So that was like a 50% reduction in whatever money we had saved up, because we were obviously saving in
mm.
Pak rupees.
Yeah.
So even when we had the money, we technically didn't, because at that point dollar had risen up. So that's when I started looking at options, and I looked into. So I had some friends who were studying here in the US. One of those who was like a very close childhood friend, and he was like 3 4 years older than me. So he was sort of like a older brother, I should say.
Hmm.
So he told me that you can look into these financing companies which can give which provide loan to international students. And again, one more caveat here in India, because when I was researching this, I did a lot of comparison between Pakistan and India. In India, you also have this opportunity to take government loans, like government, like HDFC banks and
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah,
private
yeah.
institutions. They give you loans to go abroad and study. In Pakistan, we don't have any such product at the moment,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I extensively looked into it. There's no product that's even remotely close to this. So the only options we had were lenders who were willing to finance international students. So
Hmm.
that basically narrows you down to hardly 2 or 3 lenders that are in the market. And then based on that, it was a pretty simple comparison. I applied to two of those lenders, got approved at both of them. One of them, which is Empower, and that's the reason for our podcast as well. Empower made more sense. And for me, Empower, the reason it made more sense was because it wasn't just one loan. We were taking out two loans. So the whole idea was that whatever money we had saved up, we would keep that money and use that for our living expenses and or as a buffer, because when you're moving to a new country, you don't really know what happens.
Hmm.
So the idea was we use this money since we're going to the same. And also, while we were looking for master's programs, every university we were applying to together, so that if we get in, we'd have to go together. So that way we'd only have to uh, pay for rent once, but two people can share it. So that's the whole idea. We wanted to live together, and also it just made more financial sense, because living together, paying for one rent, but at the same time doing two masters. So that's why we applied in the US. We applied to three different programs. Hult was the one that had the quickest turnaround time, and Hult ended up giving us the best scholarship as well. So we chose Hult. Another option that we were almost considering was Arizona State, but the problem was by the time Hult issued us our I-20, Arizona got late. So we were like, you know what, we have everything in place. Let's just move ahead with Hult. And plus, I was personally a bit biased towards Boston. I wanted to go to Boston, so that was the reason.
Also, like Arizona doesn't have finance market, and Boston is known for finance.
Yes, that too. That too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And
So
is
that's the
MBA?
background.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And I was going to ask you about your wife and the whole situation. Probably one of the big things is going to be about the F1 visa. But before we get there, is your MBA STEM program or is it non-STEM?
So I didn't do an MBA. I did give my GMAT, but I switched from they said you can take an MBA, but then I switched to Masters of Finance at the last minute because I saw
Okay.
that they had that option available.
Hmm.
And MBA, so at Hult, MBA and Masters of Finance, both of them are STEM. Like
Hmm.
the codes itself with USCIS are STEM, but then I went ahead and I also did a specialization in data sciences during my summers. So that was just like an added thing which I wanted to do. But either way, even if you don't do that specialization, the program is STEM.
Okay. Got it.
Both of them, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that it's only 1 year long program. I typically
Yes.
advise students to stay far from 1 year program because you don't get opportunity to do internships, and it's less time, especially if you don't have work experience. In your case, you had like 3 to 4 years of experience, so it's slightly different compared to people who might have no experience and still doing 1 year master's program. But let's talk about F1 visa interview. Um, how was that? Like, did you guys do it together? Was it separate? Because I think that must be the most interesting visa interview. Like, both of you, and you got married because you
Yeah.
kept saying like you dated in undergrad, got married, and now you're going for masters together. It has a different vibe. So, how was it?
I know, because look, with the with the F1 visa, the biggest hurdle is establishing your home ties, because that's the only reason people get rejected most of the time, because they're not able to establish home ties with them. And the way we approached it was, so you have to see that even though we are married, both of us were two independent students. That means she would have her own F1 visa, I would have my own F1
So
visa.
you guys went separately,
So
separate
we went
appointment.
separately. Yep.
Okay.
So when we
Even
went,
though you were married, you went separately.
even though and it's not like we lied on our day
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. Of
success or
course.
anything.
I'm just.
We declared.
Yeah.
She declared on her DS-160. I declared on my DS-160. I
Mm.
had my interview before. So I had my appointment before her. Her appointment was a month after mine. I
Mm.
went in, the usual F1 visa interview appointment. I like the way they grill you. I got grilled too. If you want to go into that, we can definitely go into that, how that was. But
Yeah, I do. I
oh,
want
you want
to.
to do? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
what do
want
you
to.
want to know?
I want to know the whole experience. So, what happened then?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we both filled in our DS-160s. We had our loan letters ready. Everything was ready from our school side. I had my appointment in at the end of July.
Mm.
So I went in. Uh, Again, American consulate, a lot of people, most of the students that day were coming in for F1 visas. And like by the time you move to that counter and you get your turn, like when I don't know how it works in India, but in Pakistan, like they have these like little counters, and then you're standing behind those counters, and then they call you by your number, and then you go up, and then you have that conversation, and right there and then they decide if they want to issue you your visa or not. If they want to issue you your visa, they keep your passport. Otherwise, they basically hand you that, I think blue, no, it's yellow, that yellow page, and then they send you off. I'm guessing it's going to be similar in India as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very similar.
So
Yes.
I went in that morning. I had my interview at 8 in the morning. I got there by 6:30 or something. Then I went in, just made my way from security and
And at
everything.
this point, your wife still don't have the visa, correct?
No, 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 no. I had my appointment was end of July. Her appointment was end of August,
Okay. Cool.
mid of August or end of. So there was like a month gap between our
Mm.
appointments.
Okay. Cool.
And by the way, quick update. Before this appointment, I once I was like when I was I think 19 years old, when I was in my second year of undergraduate, I
Mm.
applied for a visit visa to the US and I got rejected. So I had that rejection on my profile as well.
Oh,
That now
okay.
I was going in with that. So I went in like a bunch of other students going in before me. So by the time I got to that counter, you could see the people who go up before you. You can sort of hear their conversations going on.
Mm. Yeah.
Like most of the conversations I could hear or eavesdrop in, they were getting rejected. Like I would hear people saying all sorts of stuff that they
Mm.
shouldn't say. Like there were a couple of those which, so there was one guy I overheard. He did his undergrad from Yale and now he was going back for a master's. So that guy, I just through his conversation with the visa officer, I knew he was going to get his visa. So that guy got the visa, but everybody else around him, like there were like five counters working. One of the guys said, so I was looking into immigration, and immediately the visa officer said, what do you mean immigration? He's like, no, I was looking into master's program. And she didn't even hear him. She said, I'm sorry, I can't issue you the visa. Then another guy going in explaining, what does your parents do, what does your family do? Like people just, I could see people breaking in, like just breaking every single time they would start asking them questions. And it's not like they were trying to grill them or be aggressive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They were just being regular people, like just looking at their profile, looking at the DS-160 and asking them, okay, why do you want to go, what do you want to do? So by looking at so many rejections, I did get really nervous. I mean, I had prepared, I did the best I could, but I started getting nervous at that point. Okay, maybe if like every fifth or sixth person is getting rejected for one approval, like what are my odds of getting approved with a rejection in the past?
Mm.
Anyway, my time comes. So they fingerprint you first, and in India, I've heard they fingerprint you on a separate day, and then they
Yeah,
interview you on
they
a
do
separate day. In
biometrics
Pakistan,
separately.
yeah, at least at the post I was going to, they do everything on one day. So
Okay.
this lady, this really senior lady, like I would say she would probably be in her 50s or something, like a senior, very senior American white lady. She opened up a counter and she said, "Come here," and then she fingerprinted me, and then she said, "You can go back in the line." And I
Mm.
was waiting for either. And then at the counters, when you're standing there, you're kind of hoping that this guy looks nicer or this lady looks nicer. I really hope I go to this one instead of this one. This person looks a bit aggressive. Maybe I don't want to interview with this guy. Same thoughts are going in my head. And suddenly the lady who fingerprinted me, she said, "You know what? I'm taking interviews. Come here."
Mm.
Now, by the time when I had looked at all the counselors, she looked like the most senior one of them, because by age as well, she was the most senior.
Mm.
So I go there. She uh, asks me for my passport and stuff. I give her my I-20, and then she says, "Okay, so you want to go to Boston?" I said, "Yes, I want to go to Boston." She said, uh, "What's the story? Why do you want to go?" So I told her that I am working for this bank right now, and for my age and the kind of work I'm doing, I realized that I'm not really able to, like, that was my story. I had my story ready. I told her that I feel that at this point I feel stuck in my job. I mean, I'm managing a huge portfolio, and given my output and my numbers, I don't like, I was working at an assistant vice president at that time, and I told her that even in my company I see a lot of vice presidents and senior vice presidents not even doing half the level of, like, not even producing half the level of output I'm producing in my region, and like I'm one of the top performers and I get recognized and everything. But I think because of my age and because of my lack of experience, I am not able to get the kind of promotion and um, raises that I expect, or at least I deserve. And that's why I think going for a master's in the US is the right option for me. So she said, okay, why US? You can go for a master's anywhere, do it from your own country. And to that, I basically told her that already went to one of the top schools in my program, and that's why I ended up in this job at such a young age in the first place. And I think the next step up is the US, because most of our senior leadership is US graduated. And I think if I want to play their game, I need to become a part of their league as well. So I had kind of these answers
Mm,
prepared.
mm,
So she said, okay, so how do you plan on funding your program? She said, okay, then why master's in finance program? That's how I basically convinced her I wanted to do a master's in finance. She said, why Hult? I told her that I applied to these three colleges. This college came back to me with the highest scholarship. And naturally, this one's in Boston. Boston has a huge market and just the kind of network because where do you spend the next year or two, you really determines that network you have. So for me, going to Arizona, I told her about Arizona. I said going between Arizona and Boston, just Boston is a no-brainer for me. Again,
mm,
that answered her question of why Hult, why Masters in Finance. Next question was, okay, how do you plan to fund your program? So then I told her that I had an order ready. The very first, I told her that I have three sources of funding, and then she obviously had her I-20, uh, which would verify whatever I was saying. I told her that I have a pre-approved loan from MPOWER of X amount, then I have a scholarship from my school X amount, and then I have the rest of money I have from my family friends X amount, and then just based on that, and I-20 had that exact breakup as well. So I knew whatever answer I was giving her, it could be verified from my I-20. She looked at it and she said, okay, that makes sense, but how do you plan on paying off that loan? Because obviously, compared to PKR currency, the amount of loan I took out from my 1 year program, it was a pretty significant chunk. Like, I paid all of my tuition through my loan. I didn't take anything for living expenses, but all of my tuition was paid through the loan. So that was like a pretty significant amount. So she said, how do you plan on making the payments? I said that based on this loan, this is X is the amount of payment that I'll have to be making. And given my current income level right now, I can easily afford this payment. It's just that by the time I do my program and come back, the kind of jump or the kind of income bump I would get from doing this master's, I would very comfortably be able to pay it. So that really addressed her concern,
mm,
because I simply told her even the payment right now I can afford from my salary. I might not have enough left over after that, but I can still make the payment. So she's
mm.
like, okay, if he's earning this much right now, definitely it makes sense. His income potential will grow. Then she said, okay, how much is the interest rate? Like, just random question. At that point, because I had went through the whole loan contract, I kind of knew. And then I said this much is the interest rate. It's fixed. It won't change year on year, so it just makes my life easier because I can plan for this payment. It won't be variable. It won't fluctuate. This and that. And at that point, I just saw her. She was smiling and she was typing, and she's like, "Okay, you know what? I think you'll enjoy it there. Have fun in Boston." And then she took my
Mm.
passport and sent me back.
So yours was, I would say, yeah, obviously grilling.
It was
Uh,
like a good 10-12 minute interview, like
wow.
one of the longer ones,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. I mean,
every
in
question
India,
she
you get
asked me
like
had an
30,
answer.
30 seconds or so.
No, 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 no. It was a good 10-12 minute interview. And
Wow.
I think I was her first interview for the day. So that's why she took a little time with me as well. With
Mm,
other ones, they were just sort of churning people out, coming in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, next person. With this one,
mm,
she just started working. So I'm guessing I got lucky in that regard that I was her first
mm,
interviewee. So she spent a bit of time on me. And then again, everything she asked, I gave her a very logical response to it.
mm.
So she took her
Wow.
time, but she gave me the visa.
Yeah.
She didn't ask about my previous rejection, but I'm pretty sure it showed up on her system.
Well, that, yeah, yeah. She didn't bring up the rejection.
Nope.
She didn't bring up the marriage.
Nope, she didn't. She
Uh,
did ask me, by the way, are you married? I said, yeah, I'm married. What about your wife? I said, I'm just going to come back. And no, I don't know. No, she didn't ask me about my wife. Yeah, she did ask, are you married? I said, yeah, I'm married. But
mm,
then she didn't ask where your wife is going to be or what would she be doing.
mm. How was her interview? Like, was it harder for her, or was it similar to yours, or was it easier?
Okay, so context. My wife, her father has studied from the US. So when she was young, her father came here on a I think there was this scholarship program or something. So her father came here to Penn State, studied here for 2 years, then worked in the US. So over her life, she has been to the US thrice, twice on J1, on the J4, I think, the dependent version of J4, and then once or twice, 3 or 4 times on a visit visa as well. So she's been to and from the US multiple times. She also started her education, like her primary school in the US, because when her father was studying. So her profile was really strong. In my family, like between us, I was concerned I would get rejected and not her. But her first appointment, she goes in, 5 minutes in, she gets rejected and they send her back.
For the F1
For the
visa.
F1 visa, yeah.
Oh my
Even with all the
gosh.
background and everything. And I don't know exactly. I mean, we went over it a couple of times, but they asked her very similar questions. Why do you want to go? What's the purpose of you going?
Mm,
What does your family do?
mm,
Similar questions. And I don't know what happened. Like, she
mm,
did not get convinced, or what. The only thing the visa officer told her was that, uh, I can't grant you a visa at this time because I'm not fully convinced, or something. Like,
mm.
she still had a doubt or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
And then we basically said, you know what, it's not going to work out. Then we started talking to Hult. Hult said, you can come to our Dubai campus, or you can come to our London campus. And in the meantime, because with F1 appointments, there's just so much pressure, you don't really get appointments. We tried to get another appointment, and the next appointment was like 3 months out. Our
Mm.
I-20 was expiring. And I mean, we were in the middle of all of this chaos. We had given up our hope of coming to the US. Then suddenly one day we get an email that your emergency request for an appointment has been approved. So, quick note, uh, on September 11th, our I-20 was expiring, both
Mm.
of our I-20. On September 5th, she got an email that your request for an emergency appointment for F1 has been approved. This time it was a different post. So our first interview, my interview and her first interview was in Karachi. The second interview, we tried from a different city. That was Islamabad. So Islamabad is like the full-fledged embassy. Karachi is like a smaller consulate.
Mm.
And by the way, she's a resident. Like, she was born and raised in Islamabad. She was living with me in Karachi after marriage, but that was basically her hometown.
Mm.
So for our second try, we went to her hometown. So on 5th, she got an email. On 7th, she got her emergency appointment in the morning. She goes in again, a quick 5 minute interview, hardly two or
And
three
there's no
questions.
change to university or anything.
No
Same.
change to university,
Ah.
no change to DS 160. So when we were filling, when I was filling out her second DS 160, I literally had her first DS 160 in front of me. I copy pasted everything. The only thing changed was that, where the section they asked, have you ever been rejected a US visa? That just part was different because now she had a very fresh rejection. So I
Yeah.
added that in. Otherwise, nothing else changed. She
Mm.
went in again, a quick 5 minute interview. Why do you want to go? Uh, what will your husband be doing? Why do you want to go? Why? So she did her master's in business analytics. So why Hult? Similar response as me. She said, I was working. I want to grow. I want to grow into this field. My previous experience was in economics, but now since I'm working in it, because she was already sort of working in a data role. So she said, in order to fully get into this industry, I feel like I need to learn more about it, and that's going to come with an education. So again, she had her own story.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
she said,
And
I
we
want to
won't do
learn.
justice because we are not telling her story. But
Yeah, exactly. But
basically she,
basically,
yeah.
her premise was that I'm working in this field. I want to learn about this field. So this is the natural next step for me. The next question was, are you married? She said, yeah. What will your husband be doing? She said that, no, 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 no. They didn't ask her this directly. They basically said, do you have any dependents? And she said, no, I don't have any dependents. So they asked, will you be traveling alone? She said, yeah, I will be traveling alone, which wasn't really a lie. So they
Mm.
did specifically ask, like, is your husband going with you or not? Or what does your husband do? Or does he have a visa or not? They just asked her two questions. Do you have any dependents? They even asked me this. Do you have any dependents
Mm.
going with you? I said, no, I don't have any dependents going with me. And will you be traveling alone? I said, yeah, I will be traveling alone. She also said the same thing.
Mm.
And her third question was that, what do you plan on doing after that? So she talked about how the kind of roles and opportunities you have after the data field. 5 minutes in, and she basically told me that this during the second interview, the guy was just asking her questions for the sake of it. It's like he just wanted to give her the visa, and then he
Mm.
gave her, and he even asked her, "Why did you get rejected the first time?" And she said, "I don't know. Maybe the lady at that time was not really able to understand what I was trying to tell her." And
Mm.
because from her conversation with the second guy, she felt that the guy thought that her profile was pretty legit, and even he couldn't understand why she got rejected for the first time.
Yeah.
5 minutes in, she got the visa, she came out, and on 8th, we got our passports back. On 9th, we had our flight. On 10th, we landed in the US. On 11th, our I-20 expired. So
Wow.
that's how the
Yeah.
whole story worked out.
Yeah. And you guys were flying in for fall semester?
For fall, and then we flew in together at customs again, since we both were independent. So again, we both were in the line together. She just went to one counter, I went to the other. Both showed our passports. Again, they asked us the same questions: are you traveling
And the
alone?
port of entry was Boston?
For was Boston, yeah. We said,
Yeah.
yeah, we both of us are traveling alone. There are, because when they say, are you traveling alone, that basically means that you have any dependents coming with you.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
did not have any dependents. She was independent, I was independent. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
were no lies. I mean, it was a bit tricky because we were concerned that
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
might
Yeah. Yeah.
happen, but I mean, everything was legit. There was nothing wrong, or there
Mm,
was nothing that we were hiding. So
yeah. How did you get scholarship? I know you mentioned that you had scholarship and Hult give you the most one. Was it anything extra you had to do, or was it just purely up based on application in your profile?
so when I interviewed with, like, when Hult interviews you for your program, once they decide, so with most universities in the US, once they decide to give you an acceptance, that's when you can basically participate in whatever pool of scholarships or offers do they have. So if a university generally gives you an acceptance, chances are they will give you a scholarship as well if you ask for it. And it depends. If you apply really early, they'll have a bigger budget, so they'll be able to give you a better scholarship. If you apply really late, like I tried to get a higher scholarship, but they said that unfortunately you're coming in so late. We got a 30% scholarship each, and
Mm,
that too because I told them that I'm already speaking with Arizona State, and I might just go there as well. So because because they had given us an acceptance, it's in the best interest of a university to give you like a little scholarship to sort of retain you, because
mm,
they don't really give out acceptance unless they want to keep the student.
mm,
So they said that because you're coming in so late, this is the maximum we can go up to. And they also like clearly told me that a lot of other students that don't have such a strong profile, we are not even giving them any scholarships, because I had work experience, I had a background. My wife Komal had work experience, she had a good background. And then with us, they were not just getting one, but they were getting two students together as well. So it was also in their interest to sort of retain us.
so basically, you just asked for it.
I mean, they said that you already become eligible for it. But then
Okay.
again, once we were having that interview, I asked her that, do you guys have any scholarships? And they said,
Got it.
yeah, if we
Yeah.
give you an acceptance, we'll follow up with a scholarship
Yeah.
offer
But
from our
like you didn't
finance
have
grade
to fill up
office.
any extra form or
Nothing
essays
extra
or
because
anything.
it was a merit scholarship. It wasn't a financial aid. So it
Mm,
wasn't a need based. With need based scholarships, you do have to go through some hoops. But
got it.
with merit scholarships, you basically fill out your application, and that's where you give them all your grades, your previous work experiences, your letter of recommendations. So that sort of works both ways. That works for a merit scholarship, and that also works for your offer.
Got it. Okay. What's the total cost? Maybe you can break it down for tuition fees and then also for cost of living for Boston.
So our tuition fee was $55,000. I
Mm,
mean, you can just look at the website; it's public information for Hult. It's a one-year program for masters in finance or data analytics. MBA is pricier; that's like 80,000 something. So 55,000. This is before any scholarships and something. I had like 30-40% scholarships, so that brought that down. And as far as living expenses are concerned, Hult would tell you that your annual living expenses for 1 year in Boston would be somewhere between $22,000 to $24,000, which I think it's a bit on the upside, but then again, given Boston, it's very realistic. We were able to do that in half of it because, again, because we were two people living in one house, so naturally groceries are the
mm,
same, electricity, water, everything is the same. So we were able to basically pay for one, and two people could survive on it. So that's how we
mm.
were able to lower our living expenses. But yeah, Boston is one of the priciest cities in the US, and
It's the fourth expensive city after New York, Bay Area.
New York Bay Area, and
Uh,
then
I don't know. I think there's one more, Seattle,
Seattle, yeah, and
and
then
then
Boston. I
Boston.
mean, all these four cities, like, they keep alternating amongst each
Mm,
other.
yeah.
More or less, rent and housing, it's similar.
What's
Cost of living
the
is
cost of
similar.
living like per month if you were to say individual?
Yeah, of
If you
course. So we were living in a so I was living close to my campus. I was living just at a 15-minute walk. So our house or our unit was in Cambridge. It was like an old house, but we had a basement unit which was recently renovated. So our rental expense, everything included, like utilities and everything, it was like 1900, 1950 a month. And then on top of that, groceries could vary depending on how much you eat out or how much you cook at home. Groceries generally vary person to person, but I think, like, for me and for a lot of our friends as well, Anything
300,
between
400.
3 to 500 a month is reasonable for groceries. And it honestly depends on how much you cook at home. If
So
we did a
roughly
lot, so we did a lot of meal
1500.
prep. So our grocery bill averaged out, our grocery bill averaged out to like 300, 350 a month, because we would buy everything and then we would just meal prep everything and freeze it. So that
Mm,
way we did not really have to spend for grocery, except like breakfast stuff and regular stuff that you get, like bread, eggs, milk, etc., yogurt, the perishables. But most of our food, we would just prep it in the first week of the month. And then because we were also studying, we did not have time to cook every single day. So it was easy. Just pull out a box, heat it up, both of us would eat, and then be on our way.
yeah. So
So
roughly, would you
500
say
for food, 500
1500
for food.
on
I
an
think rent
average?
for one person, for the difference is that in Boston, if you're like paying $1,000 a month in rent, you will get a room in a decent place, but that would be shared. Any other place in the US, for $1,000 a month, you can get your own private room. And if you
Yeah.
go up to like 1200, 1300, you'll get a private room with a private bathroom as well. In
Yeah.
Boston, if you want a private room with a private bathroom, look at something around 1800 to $2,000.
Yeah.
So we were paying $2,000. We had like a small basement unit. It was like a studio with a door in the middle. It wasn't that big. It a very small unit, but the benefit was we had a private kitchen, a private bathroom, and a private bedroom. So we were paying like almost $2,000 a month for that.
Mm.
So for per person, it's 1,000.
Nice. Okay. Now you're in United States. Was there things that you felt like I thought it was gonna be like this, but the reality is slightly different. It's like, did you face anything like that? I'm asking culture shocks as well, but I'm assuming most culture shocks are similar. But did you feel like I thought it was gonna be like this? Seniors had told this, I had assumed this, but wow, it's completely different.
So I would think the biggest culture shock. I wouldn't really say I like. There wasn't much of a culture shock except the fruits and the food here, because food here is very different than back home. Like
Yeah,
at least when it comes to anything that's grown in the soil. I mean, because the soil here is very different than back home. So
yeah.
for me, overall, food was a big culture shock.
Hmm.
Um, Especially when it comes to fruits and vegetables, because I don't know, I just liked our fruits and vegetables back home as well. But
Sure.
otherwise, as far as like, again, growing up, I grew up in a very I had the privilege to travel as well when I was young with my family, so I was quite familiar with how things were. And then I also took a course on US history back when I was in college, so I had a pretty good understanding. Like, as far as globalization is concerned, I was pretty globalized when I came here. The biggest shock I had was when it came to internships in the job market, because I kind of knew that things were getting difficult and there was a lot of competition, but just the sheer scale of how difficult it would be, like 6 months, like when people would when our seniors would talk about filling out 800 applications, 1,000 applications, I was like, are these guys joking? Like, if you just divide that to a daily number, you'd go like, these guys are doing 5 to 10 applications a day. Like, it just didn't make sense to me until I was part of that race and I realized, oh my God, this is actually true. And it's as much about quality as much it is about numbers. You can focus on all the quality you want, but if you're not doing a certain number of applications, you're basically just not competing.
Yeah.
So that was something very big, because I thought getting in, because I thought like the economy is huge. There are so many companies. Landing an internship where they hardly pay you pennies, or they even don't even pay you. Like, if you go for unpaid internships, how hard would that be?
Mm.
The difference is because in our countries, we are the locals there. So generally, when you grow up in a country, you do have some sort of connections or any kind of network that could help you. Like, if I wanted to work for free for an internship in Pakistan, chances are I would be able to find something that would take me on for free, give me the experience, and then that maybe that could be used for a job. But here, we are not just competing against other international students; we are competing with locals as well.
Mm.
So that was a big, I mean, at some level, I kind of understood that, but it really made a lot more sense when I got here. Like,
Yeah.
okay, as an international student, you are not at the top of the priority list. You come at like third or fourth. So naturally, you have to have better skills, and you'd have to provide a better value than a lot of local ones as well. Because for any employer, they have to go through a lot more hoops to even consider you, let alone hire you.
Mm.
So that was one of the big shocks, like where I realized that no matter how good we are, we have to be better than a lot of local Americans here. Otherwise, we don't stand a chance, and it's pretty competitive. Like, I think US is the most competitive economy when it comes to jobs and like just in terms of labor as compared to any other country in the world.
Yeah. How's Hult? Again, you're the first one I'm talking to who went to Hult.
Hmm.
So, how is it like? Is it good? I mean, what was your experience studying there for a year?
So
Does it have like a big campus? Sorry, I
it's
cut
it's
you off.
it's like a very modern campus again. So with Hult, you have what you have to keep in mind is that you compare apples to an apple and oranges to an oranges. You don't compare Hult with places like Harvard or MIT because the reason is Hult is in a very different league. A place like Harvard, this campus or this because Hult is in Cambridge, so it's surrounded by Boston College, Harvard, MIT, all of these brand name, these top schools. And naturally, the comparison comes in. The reason I keep telling people you don't compare Hult with these institutions is because these institutions are hundreds of years old. Hult
Mm,
is a new institution. So if you are to compare Hult, compare it with institutions that came up in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And on top of it, it's not a state school, it's a private school. So you have to keep that in mind. Having said that, Hult is like 20 something years old. Having said that, in 20 years, the kind of growth Hult has seen from one small campus in UK, Ashridge, to a campus in London, then to a campus in Boston, then to a campus in San Francisco, then a summer campus in New York, in Shanghai, Hult has grown a lot. And then my experiences with the Boston campus, I can't speak for other campuses, but the faculty there at Hult, they have managed to secure a very good faculty. I'll give you an example. My SQL professor was a sitting senior vice president in Wells Fargo. So that was his day job, and he was teaching at Hult. Then another professor, the one who I took machine learning with, he was a PhD from MIT, born and raised in Boston. So these are the type of professors we had. Locals to Boston are coming from good schools, but the difference where I think Hult stands out from a lot of other colleges are in a lot of other state or regular universities, you'll have tenured professors. Professors or guys who did an undergrad, who from an undergrad went directly to a PhD or did a master's, went to a PhD, studied more, did a thesis, did their research, and now became assistant professors. And from that, they just kept teaching and teaching and teaching and became full fledged tenured professors. That's what you'll find. With Hult, it's different. With Hult, the professors are with experience. So
mm,
99% of our professors were actually people who were working in the industry, had the skills that they were teaching.
What's the
Again,
batch size? Like, what's the typical batch size?
so my masters in finance cohort had like 150 students, then similarly 100, so I think at one given moment at our graduation there were like 400 students graduating, maybe 450, like somewhere between 400 to 500 between all the cohorts. The MBA was the biggest out of all. I think MBA would be like 250 something, but my program was the smallest because for
Would
some
you
reason
recommend people to do masters in finance versus MBA?
it honestly depends on where you want to go. So
So give me like
during this one
MBA,
year, and also
MBA.
to connect it back to your question about Hult versus other schools, I think when anybody sitting in India or Pakistan, when you're considering applying to the US, I would strongly suggest Hult, but here's how I would approach it. A general rule of thumb is that you should apply to at least three universities, if not five. So let's say if you're going with five universities, I would place Hult here at number three. Hult
Mm,
is definitely not the lower tiered ones. Definitely not, because the education, the kind of career workshops they give you, like given their background and given their resources, Hult is doing a pretty good job. So you have to go in with the mindset of like you have to manage your expectations when you go into Hult. You don't expect going into Hult thinking that everything will be served to me on a plate. Even Harvard students don't get served that.
mm,
But obviously, there is like a brand name, there's a legacy attached to Harvard or MIT that Hult does not have yet. But if you just simply go at LinkedIn and look at the alumni, you'll see the kind of places they're working at. A lot of people from my cohort went to places like Amazon, Goldman Sachs. In fact, I'm also in the process with one of these companies right now. So what I'm trying to, and even people who graduated before me, like just from the graduates of 2020. So I started in 2023. The batch of 2023 that graduated from Hult, they had 10 people go into Goldman Sachs. They
mm.
had like two, three people go into Morgan Stanley. They had people go into Meta. They had
Also,
people
I
go
just want to
into,
clarify this is
uh,
not sponsored by Hult because
of course.
it
No, I'm
might
just saying.
sound like one if I did.
I'm just saying. The reason I'm
Yeah.
saying is that when people look at any university, they look at their college placements. So What I'm trying to say is that Hult has good college placements, just like any other university. So you need to manage your expectations when you go to a school like Hult.
So
So
in you said roughly 150 batch, like
for masters in finance, yeah, like you'll have
would you
students
say
between
everyone
150.
ended up
No, so that's the thing. There's a wide variation. You'll
Mhm.
have students that are at the top of the curve, but again, since it's relatively easier to get into compared to a lot of top 20 institutions in the US, it also has a lot of students who are at the bottom of the curve. So
Mm.
in Hult, what you'll notice is that there's a wide variation between students. You'll have very high performing, very high quality students who
Mhm.
you'll probably think that they're doing wonders when they get out of here, and then you also have students who you start questioning that why has even Hult issued them an admission. So that's the thing. The swings are wide. With other schools, they are very particular because they have a very high standard of giving admissions. A lot of students that come in, they are basically within a certain average of each other. With Hult, you'll find students with sort of wide differences between them. So that's what I would consider is one big problem. Not a problem, but like a caveat you need to keep in
Yeah,
mind.
got it. Okay. Who would you say should do masters versus MBA? Again, they both are doing in finance. So which one should one choose? Why?
If you, so I would say this: if you have a lot of work experience behind you, I would suggest go for masters. The reason is because in an MBA cohort, in generally between the masters and MBA cohort, our average age in finance, in masters in finance, was very young. Like I think our average age was like 26, 27 years old in class, because
Mm.
most of the students were between these ages. But whereas in MBA, I think the average age was like 29 or 31. So a lot more senior people coming into MBA. So if I had like more than 5 to 8 years of experience behind my back, I'd probably go for an MBA. But
Got it.
if you have some experience, I would say
What
go
would
for
you
a master's in
say?
finance.
Sorry, it just reminded me. What would you say about these? I don't know if you know about these programs, but there are these program called MIM, Masters in
Master's
Information Management,
International Management. Yeah,
and
yeah, I
then
know, I know.
also Management of Technology (MOT), and they call it. If you don't have experience, don't go to MBA, but then do this mini MBA, which I feel like is a like I don't want to say it over here, but it's like a cash cow programs for international
Yep.
students.
Cash cow is the right word, because if they're basically cashing on to students who don't really know what they want to do in life, yet they just know they want to do a master's. I mean, it's think of it this way: it's still a product, right? They don't force you to buy it. You're the one who comes in and applies to these programs and to applies to these schools. Schools are going to offer these programs. These are basically glorified undergraduate programs, because these are
Yeah.
very generalized generic programs. With a master's program, I personally feel that if you want to do a master's, you need to know what you're doing a master's in, because
Mhm.
otherwise you will not get that value out of it. Otherwise, it's just 1 year or 2 years where you're extending your undergraduate. You're not really learning anything specialized. You're not really getting that specialized knowledge that you should get from a master's program. And I also agree with you when you say that 1 year programs, don't go for 1 year programs. They can get really tricky or dicey at times. And I agree with you. It's too big. It was too big of a risk that I took.
Mm.
And if anybody comes to me now and asks, I also suggest them that until and unless you're like really crunched in terms, because living expenses are also a thing, right? If you're doing a 2 years program, you also have to now dish out for 2 years of expenses where you can't work.
Yeah,
So
but
that's what I
it
tell
actually
them.
depends because most of the time, again, it depends. Hult might be slightly different, but if you end up doing co-op, your co-op
Yes, yes.
salary will be higher because you have two-year
Yep,
program. So like
100%.
3 months of summer internship. Most summer internship could get extended, and you could do like with your education, with your fall semester. So there's like a lot of things. That's why I like 2 years master's program. Even though yes, you'll pay another twelve
You'll pay
thousand
more,
dollars for
yeah.
your living
Yeah.
situation, but the benefits outweigh that $12,000 regardless. I mean, I
100%, 100%. If everybody would comes to me for advice, I tell them the exact same thing. Like,
yeah
if you can afford to, or if you can somehow manage, go for a 2 year program, because you
yeah
learn a lot. You get the option for a co-op or an internship, and then you also don't. You're not really pressed to find a job immediately the day you start your
yeah. I mean,
masters,
you
because
in
the
your
day I
case you just
entered,
yeah.
yeah, we entered in September, and we were looking for internships from September. So
Are you allowed
again,
to do internship? Because it's only two semester. Is it quarterly or is it 2 semesters
so
for
our
you?
program was designed over 3 semesters:
Okay,
fall, spring, and
and
summer.
summer.
In
Gotcha.
summer, you can do internship, but because you're graduating so soon, you're restricted of only interning for 3 months.
Interesting. So even though you've only completed 6 months in United States, you are allowed to do internship in summer.
Because by the time summer starts, you have completed more than 8 months. So there's a requirement for 8 months in order to be eligible for, I think, CPT or OPT.
CPT.
Internship is a CPT, right? So in order to be eligible for CPT, you need to have, I think, 8 months in the country.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's two academic
Two
semesters.
academic terms. So
Uh,
yeah.
but uh, but again, it depends on the program and
Mm,
the university. Like Purdue University, their management engineering program. Like after first semester, you can do it because
mm,
it's a professional program and it's not like a thesis program or something.
mm.
Again, it really depends on the university. But in your case, obviously, did
It's
you
2 semesters. Hult,
got
Hult allows you to do that.
okay? In your case, did you end up getting internship or no?
No, I did not. No, I did not. I did get an internship. It was an unpaid internship, but it was like a very small company. And basically, my DSO said that you're better off not doing this internship. Like
Because you'll have to take CPT 1 unit or something like that.
yeah, and that too, she was like, I mean, this is not really a great job. This company is not really like a good standard company. I mean, if you're
Interesting.
just doing it for, she said you have work experience. If you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, I would suggest don't do that. So
Mm,
instead, I was like, you know what? I'd rather just focus that time on a full-time job. And during my summers, then I went ahead and I took four of my most challenging. That's why I ended up with a data science specialization, because I thought if I'm not doing an internship, I'd rather learn this, because this is something that would benefit me much more in the future as compared
mm.
to doing a very basic, boring internship. So that's how I ended up doing a specialization during my summers.
Got it. Okay. Any advice for full-time job? Like how I know you mentioned you were also in the same zone where now you are applying to 800 plus companies and 800 plus
Yeah.
application. How did you end up getting your job, and what advice would you give to the incoming?
So we talked about doing 800 applications. One thing which I have learned so far is that while quantity matters, it's definitely quality over quantity. The way you find that sweet spot is because once you go through this process, that's when you realize what your sweet spot is. Because some students, like in order to land an ideal job, I think the best process is that first you look at the company, then you look at what openings they have, then you match whatever openings you're interested in with your profile, and then you build a resume, a tailored resume according to that particular opening. And
Mm,
then you network with people in that company, you connect with them, you talk to them, you tell them that you're interested and you would like to be referred by them. And when all of these things are done, that's when you go in and you apply for a job, especially when you get a referral email, or at least if you're submitting your application, you should have someone in the company who can sort of accelerate that
mm,
application for you. But I mean, logically, it sounds amazing to do this, but just going through a process like this would probably take you at least a few weeks, if not months. From the time you look for a company, you connect with somebody, you get time from them to talk, and assuming they agree in the first try, I mean, it takes a lot of work. So it's not ideal, especially when you're running against time. But at the same time, just simply looking at applications and dumping your resume in them, it's not going to work. So if I were to go back in time and restart my job search again, one thing which I would immediately do it, which ended up working really in my favor with a lot of interviews, is that you tailor your resume with every single job you apply to.
mm,
Apply to less jobs, but put in quality work. So tailor your resume with each job that you apply to, because that first of all takes away the red flag on your resume that your resume is not aligned to the role. Because 90% of the times people don't hear back is because they're simply they might have the experience, but they're a jack of all trades, but a recruiter is not looking for a jack of all trades.
yeah.
So put in that effort. It does not take a lot of time. Once you
Mm,
start going through it, it takes you hardly 10-15 minutes per resume to alter it and tailor it to the job. So do that and keep networking with people. So don't network specifically with a goal in mind.
mm.
You for example, you like going to, let's say, Walmart. Just talk to people, reach out to people. You never know who might end up helping you.
Yeah,
And
I like when you should network when you don't need it,
when you don't need it, because that's
because
when you get the benefit
yeah,
later on.
because otherwise
Because
you come across very desperate.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So net just and network shouldn't be very hard. Like the very simple thing you can do is send out connection request. Hi, I saw that you work in this department. I'd love to speak to you for 5 minutes. I am a student. Just a short message. Some would say yes, they'd speak to you, some won't. That's something which is just part of the whole. That's just part of the process. Some will reject, some will respond to you, some will not respond to you. People who do respond to you, just talk to them, ask them questions, learn about them. Don't make it about you. Just say, what do you do at Walmart? How do you get here? What was your journey like? Okay, if I have any questions, I would love to be in touch with you. And
Mm.
then just every couple of months or whenever, just send in a message or say like, oh, I was a student then, I recently graduated, I saw that you have an opening on your do you have any opening on your team, or I saw an opening on the website, can you help me with it? Just be open. Don't try to scam them or something. It's okay if you tell them that you're looking for their help. When you message them on LinkedIn, they exactly know that this person requires my help, or they need some kind of information and anything. Don't feel ashamed of asking for help, because that's literally how you grow in life. It's
Mm.
okay, go ahead, ask for help. So network, tailor your resume, and start early. These are the core principles. After that, it really depends on person to person, their background, their experience. But I think every person looking for a job, not just here, anywhere in the world, just do these three things: network without anything, like network without a reason, tailor your resume so that whoever's looking at your resume can at least align it with the job, and
Mm.
start early. The sooner you start, the better chances you have.
Love it. Awesome. What are different career options after doing masters in finance? So one is what you're doing. Are there like, I know a lot of people want to be investment banker. I know a lot of people want to get into hedge funds and all of
Yeah.
that, private equity, hedge funds, managed assets. What are the different career options?
So finance is a very broad field. There's a look. Finance is just like, I would say, it's just like it's finance is just like sales or marketing. It's a business function.
Mhm.
In every company, finance is a business function. So you will have a finance department in every single company. This is what regular finance is. Then there are financial services. So when you talk about banking, private equity, uh, hedge funds, this is financial services. That's different. And then within these, again, these are also companies within a bank or within a hedge fund or within a private equity. There are multiple roles. So it really depends, because you will find, let's take an example of an asset management company like Fidelity.
Mm.
Fidelity will hire people with a background in marketing, with a background in HR, with a background in MBA, even though it's a financial services firm, but it still has all these other functions as well. At the same time, uh, a physics PhD or a computer science PhD would end up in a company like Fidelity on their quant team or on their data science team. So it depends. Like
Yeah,
with a master's in
I get
with a
that
master's
part.
in
Like,
finance, with the master's in finance, it's very broad. It's really up to the person what they want to do. Do they like accounting or auditing more? That's a different field. Do they like quantitative? So I liked quantitative finance. That's why my program, the way I did it, and my experience even right now, the job I'm doing is sort of like a blend of finance with data analytics. I
mm.
like quantitative finance. So that's what I went into. Then you have people who like trading more. Then they go into money market, or they go into equity market, or they just generally go into the trading industry. Uh, that's you basically go to New York for that. Then in finance, you also have then you have data sciences in finance, where you're basically building dashboards, running models. Then you have risk. Then you have insurance. So finance, just like any other field, it's huge. It also depends on what you like doing.
Mm. Okay, love it. Any advice for couples who are planning to do like what you did, like both going together at the same time?
It's difficult. It's really difficult, because when both of you are studying and both of you have assignments simultaneously, married life goes on a back burner. But then it's very important that you keep that in mind as well. So I mean, we just took it like during the day, during the week, we would work on our assignments. We would, and since both of us were studying together, both of us sort of understood the kind of pressure
Mm.
each one was in. If you are studying alone and your spouse is a dependent, they generally don't really know what you go through when it comes to pressure at school. So there, especially in cases where one spouse is studying and the other spouse is a dependent, problems arise because one spouse is at home pretty much not doing anything, because you can't work on a dependent visa, you can't do much on it. So I would suggest, if you have the opportunity, both of you study, because the reason is, when both of you end up in the job market, it will be two incomes as well. So that's the benefit you get as a couple. But
And
at the same
hopefully
time,
you are not in this situation, but also in future, one can go on one another dependence visa as well.
exactly, exactly. more opportunities for you, more chances of H1B for you. But then also it's high risk as well, because
Yeah,
A,
yeah.
there's a big financial commitment upfront, and then B, uh, with the financial commitment, now both of you need to get a job. It's not just one. But then again, there's, as you said, there's a backup, right? If one person eventually ends up on a H1B, the other one always has an option.
Mm.
But I mean, in our case, it made sense because we graduated together. We both entered the job market together as freshies. Then both of us worked, both of us gained experience, and both of us wanted to do a master's. So this was just like a logical thing to do. The only thing which we planned here was basically our marriage, because we planned our marriage around the time we got married in January, because we planned to go for a master's in August. So
Mm. Nice.
that's what.
Okay.
But yeah, would strongly recommend, go ahead and do it.
Nice. I love it. Cool. Awesome. This has been such a insightful session. Thank you again so much for sharing everything from getting a scholarship, F1 visa, what is masters in finance, and all of it. One final advice for any incoming students, especially from Pakistani students who may have different mindset and now they're coming. So, what would you want to tell them, or any international student? It doesn't have to be just Pakistan.
My word of advice is that it's very easy to get distracted here. I mean, when you come to the US, again, there's a culture shock, everything's different, you're free, you have a lot of freedom. It's very hard to forget why you're here in the first place. Because when you go to your school, you will meet a number of people, you will get called to events, you'll get a chance to go clubbing, you'll get a chance to party. Just don't forget why you're here for. Definitely enjoy, do what you're doing, but always keep the end goal in mind. Like why you went through all that pain of filling out those forms, putting in your DS 160, going in front of that visa officer, then paying for a flight here. And everybody who comes here, the first 6 months are a struggle. No matter who you are, how good your background is, how rich or how poor you are, whenever you go to a new country, the first 3 to 6 months are always a struggle for everyone. I mean, you're basically setting yourself up. So just keep in mind why you're coming here. Remember that struggle you went through, and yeah, just enjoy along the way, but don't forget your end goal. Like you're coming here for a reason. So
Yeah.
just be true to yourself.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. Awesome. Rohan, thank you so much for doing this. I am excited. Hopefully, we'll do one more session on just the finance and different career options and all of it. But until our next one.
Keep smiling and keep hustling. Thank you so much, Yudi, for this time. I really
Bye.
appreciate it.
Thank you.